Welcome to the 80s and 90s Retro Collector.
You are watching the 80s and 90s Retro Collector. Subscribe.
Welcome to the 80s and 90s Retro Collector.
What one's that called? Okay. Oh, a third secret. That's the ones you love, isn't it? Let's have a look at her eyes a few times.
Look at his face.
How come you love those ones so much?
It's like this.
Show me. What's it look like? Yeah. So you're happy with those. And what's the other one you got in the other bag? What one's that called? What's the name of that one? This one here.
Oh, I don't know.
Is that like to put in your bag maybe?
Yeah.
What are you going to name him?
I don't know.
I love them ones. So how many you got in total now?
I forgot.
Okay, so you're happy, are you? Oh, go Nanny. Harry Potter. How much are they, my friend?
I'll say after space, somebody. I'm just waiting for somebody.
Oh, you're looking after it for somebody. Well, we'll come back to the car this way.
No problem.
Thank you, boss. You look comfy, man. Good chair. Perfect.
Go.
Yeah,
Wait, this was,
I know.
Daddy, do you remember this one?
Yeah.
You got that one from last time.
Mm. What'd you get? Hello. How you?
Oh, goody girly. I've got this Stanley. Get back to your time.
I'm gonna try and get one of these. Hello. Right, thank you to Let Loose on Toys. Give him a follow, guys, on YouTube and Instagram for this. I actually really like this. It's a little wrestler with boom on, and he's got a little ponytail and a little goatee. So some faults there, so I appreciate that. And also this Big Boss Man stamper from 1990. That is really cool. I've got one of these on card, but I haven't got a loose one, so I'm looking forward to putting that with me WWF Golden Era display. Thank you. And the Bendham, the Road Dog Jesse James. And that's so weird, I got wrestling on the telly now, and just while I edit, I like to have it on in the background, and the Road Dog is actually on there. So yeah, that's weird. And also, mate, the Only Fools and Horses videos. We got a little appearance by our Uncle Albert in the little fun trailer at the beginning of the video here. And also, mate, I had this sticker album when I was 12 years old in 1994, the WWF sticker album, so thanks for that as well. And yeah, you want to say hi, everyone? There you go. Yeah, but this is cool. That's going on my, I was going to put it on my keys, but that's going to go with my wrestling display. Boom. Love it. If you enjoyed today's show, guys, please put your thoughts down in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon for future videos. And yeah, we've got plenty more to come. Thank you, everyone, and take care.
Hey Retroheads, it's Nick here, and time for another edition of Bands You Know, Releases You Don't. So last time we did this, which was an obscure EP from Coldplay. This time, who do you think made this? The answer, Snow Patrol. One of the headliners at this year's Latitude Festival, but yes, a lot of people don't realise about Snow Patrol. I mean, obviously it's been 20 years since they hit the top 5 with Run, but this here is one of their early releases from 1999, a single entitled Starfighter Pilot, which was released on Jeepster Records, best known for giving the world Belle and Sebastian, another 90s favourite for those of you who remember back then. And this one, I found it in a second-hand store back in the day, and the single Starfighter Pilot and a couple of additional B-sides. And what a lot of people don't realise about Snow Patrol is that Gary Lightbody, the singer, originally formed the band while he was at university in Dundee way back in 1994. And this track is from their debut album, Songs for Polar Bears. Interestingly, before they were called Snow Patrol, they were briefly called Polar Bear and Shrug. So this one is from, so yeah, their debut album came out on Jeepster Records in about 98-99. The one thing I would say, the difference between this album and a lot of their later stuff, of course they later became known for being a lot more soft rock, I suppose, but this one actually has, this song Starfighter Pilot actually has a synthesizer middle section. So, which, you know, if you're more used to their later material, then that's probably going to seem a little bit random to listen to. But yeah, I think a lot of their stuff had a lot of kind of like early, like electronic influence. I suppose there was a lot of that doing the rounds in the 90s, where I think a lot of people were just discovering sort of like a lot of the kind of like dancier side of music, which was a lot more keyboard orientated, with some synth elements as well. Kind of bringing it back from the 80s, I suppose. I have one other release of people of I have one other Snow Patrol release, what I'm trying to say there, from the band, which is their second album, When It's All Over We Still Have to Clear Up, which came out in 2001. And it features a single called Ask Me How I Am, which also had a lot of electronic influence, but also another track called One Night Is Not Enough, which sounds a lot like a lot of their later material. I think it was a bit of a preview of what's to come. It was sort of like a sort of ballad-esque track. Their songs have always been quite guitar orientated, but I think that was probably their first kind of ballad attempt, for want of a better term. So I think if you listen to that track, there's it has a lot in common with a lot of their later stuff. And of course, a couple of years later, they came out with Final Straw, from which Run, Chocolate, and a bunch of their other songs that they're known for came out. And of course, of course, Eyes Open as well was the album that followed after that, which actually became the biggest selling album of 2006 and one of the biggest selling UK albums of all time, which only by doing research for this I actually found out. So there we go. I don't think any songs from any of these songs are going to be featuring in their Latitude set, unfortunately, but it's well worth tracking down if you're a fan of the band. If you've recently discovered them, then I would say definitely go have a listen to some of the stuff that came out before Chasing Cars and Set Fire to the Third Bar and You're All I Have, because there's definitely a few gems in there. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget you can find me on all the socials at Nickfield Media.
Hi everybody, good morning. Welcome to the 80s and 90s Retro Collector. We have now reached 100k. Thank you very much for your overall support and ongoing support, retro fans. Please don't forget to check out our merch on our Shopify store as indicated below on our 80s and 90s Retro Collector channel. Please feel free to tap on the actual 80s and 90s Retro Collector link leading up to our Shopify store for our merch. Check out this cap, folks. I'm loving this. I'm rocking this already. And once again, thank you very much for ongoing and continuous support. Thank you very much, fans. Cookie, cookie, cookie! The forces have been strong with these! Bye for now.